Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I'm Lauren Hubele, here as your host, interviewing Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, welcome.
Hi, Lauren. Glad to be here.
Jyoti, we've got a big topic that's quite profound and I think timely for the period we're living through, but let's begin with you opening up this sacred space.
Thank you. Grandmothers and grandfathers, ancestors of the East, we call to you. Bring us your insight for this day and be with us. Grandmothers and grandfathers, ancestors of the South, we call to you. Show us a direction that is beneficial at this point in time. And thank you for being with us. Grandmothers and grandfathers, ancestors of the West, we ask to learn how to receive what is important and relevant at this time. And thank you for being with us. Grandmothers and grandfathers, ancestors and wisdom keepers of the North, we call to you. Lend us your wisdom for what we look upon, and thank you for being with us. Grandfather Sky, keeper of the starry night and of the kingdom of the air and the birds, thank you for being with us. Grandmother Earth, your beauty, your compassion, we thank you. And to that wise being that lives inside of us, thank you for being with us. So I have a piece I thought was pertinent. It's called Shedding Old Skins. Sometimes small epiphanies dawn in a moment of everyday business, and you see the practiced routines that you've insinuated into your nervous system. Tape loops that circle like buzzards waiting for the kill, only the kill is you and your growth. Sometimes one needs to peel off those old skins of habitual patterns, pull the tape strands out by the neck until dead and buried, those ways of being that served you in old days and times, and now you can clearly see are not who you want to be. Shedding old skins is intense, drawing up the bad blood and regrets, resentments you'd rather not see, yet once seen must be healed cell by cell, DNA strands cleared to bring in more light, and those skins laid to rest, no longer yours.
Thank you, Jyoti. Peeling off old skins. What does that mean to you?
It means that we're in a place right now and have been for a number of years, I think, that is about shedding our past, shedding those old skins, those old resentments, those old ways of thinking that saw us through up until now. But the image I have is that we're at this doorway into a new time. And people have been talking about new times and all this for centuries. Vibrationally, we are there, right at a doorway, and we can't fit through the frame of that doorway with the lower vibrations of the old patterns. They have to fall away because those lower vibrations can't make it into the slightly higher vibrations as we step into our future.
So when we talk about old patterns here, we're talking about old ways of doing things, and that generally has to do with systems and our attachment to systems and the way things have to be. Would you agree?
Yes, and the way we think and the way we behave, it's like the difference between having a conversation with someone and trying to get something across to them that you feel they're doing. So the you message, the blame, the other person's going to shut down. They'll get defensive. Nothing real is going to happen there. But if you step back for a moment and you reframe it into an I message point of view, this is what I'd like to see happen. This is what would work for me. Can we come to some agreement? But keeping the ball in your court from an I message point of view is like the higher vibration of the blame conversation.
Mm. Jyoti,
There's,
I don't think you could speak enough about that. That's huge.
it is huge. It's taking a slightly different perception, reframing things so that there's more possibility of truth happening, and it's in our actions. It's not just thinking about it and wondering, what it could look like. It's making an effort to take it into our day-to-day life and implementing it and experimenting. When you do an experiment, it's just an experiment.
Sure.
It might work, it might not work. The other person might be able to hear you, might not, might throw it back in your face. you know um it's like experimenting and trying out a new set of clothes, a new pair of shoes, so to speak, to walk into the future with. And because we were all taught usually different ways of doing things. These are the old patterns that perhaps served us early on, served our parents, served our grandparents, but that age is winding down, that time period is winding down, and this new time coming needs the development and the insights to take us into the future, and needs a higher vibration to take us into the future, not only physically. Our bodies are changing, more people, you could say, want more plant-based foods, so we're stepping away, some people, into a more less dense way of feeding ourselves and nourishing ourselves. Some people might be looking at all this emotional stuff that they've been carrying around for a long time. And I remember going into therapy one time. I was doing therapy with this woman I knew. And I thought to myself, how long have I been carrying this stuff around? How many decades have I been carrying this around? And it's time. I was, parking my car, getting ready to go into the office, her office. And I thought, I'm just going to go in there and take care of this and get on with it. Not that I was pushing past those things that needed to be attended to, but just that I was reaching a point where in my own process, it was like, okay, enough already. Let's get to the meat of the matter here. Let's take care of this and move on.
So you've mentioned working at this higher vibration and associated that with more truth telling. It seems to me, by listening to you, that this polarity we see is actually at the lower vibration. This clashing of sides. I'm on this side, you're on this side. And what you're asking for, inviting folks to do, is step above that and just share your personal truth.
Yes, and looking at what holds you back, looking at what the fears are, that might have you second guess yourself, or step back and not do that. And sometimes the fears are valid, And sometimes it's just part of a collective fear, about telling the truth, about not doing the egg walk where you're walking around, with mincing steps around somebody else's feelings, but being willing to let that other person have their feelings.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, nobody ever died from being sad or pissed off. That's how I see it. And so people can have their feelings and move on.
Right.
And also with that polarity, the earth is polarized. This plane of existence is polarity based, right or wrong, good or bad, that kind of thing. And so beginning to rise above that balance of opposites takes us into looking at a different dimensional flow, I think. And so the main thing with the shedding of old skins is that vibrationally, those things that we've been dragging around behind us as old habit patterns, vibrationally, they cannot go with us where we're going. They can't fit through the doorway. We must needs let them go.
Right. So, how would someone experience this right now? I'm thinking of, scenarios for perhaps maybe a relationship issue where it's just not working anymore. We're not seeing eye to eye. We're not growing together, or something along that lines. How might someone take this method and put it into action there? Because obviously something's holding them back from being truthful about their needs.
Well, sometimes, um, who was it? Um, Don Juan in the Carlos Castaneda books said, sometimes people don't do things till their back's against the wall, and personally, I wouldn't have it any other way. That was his quote. Um, I think that sometimes things have to reach a point, maybe not always, but sometimes, where you have nothing left to lose.
Hmm.
And you have to pull yourself out of the fire. You have to champion yourself and your own needs and your own growth. I mean, you can start with a conversation, an iMessage point of view. This is how I'm feeling. This is what's working for me. This is what isn't working for me. Um, and really listening to what the other person is returning to you, what that other person is saying to you. um it's delicate. It's delicate at best, especially in intimate relationships and family relationships. It's delicate. Um, but we're all, I think, being pushed, some sooner, some later, at different times, to let go of things that just don't serve us anymore and standing for ourselves and our own truth.
Hmm. Jyoti, it's so interesting that you have this topic today because this morning down at the river on our swim, the few of us that swim together, we're having a conversation about this shedding and stepping out of the norm, and that it actually happens on two levels. On, first you might do it mentally and detach from things, and then it's more physical. And we were just batting around that idea that how everyone has their place they start letting go and shedding. What might you have to add to that conversation?
Well, creation didn't happen in a day, supposedly. So I think that, we need to mull things around and weigh the consequences of what we're going to do or set in motion, what the fears are, what holds us back, what we are afraid of happening if we do stand for ourselves, if we begin to shed those old patterns that no longer fit for that person, and what's going to possibly potentially happen around them. And people have to weigh that. I mean, that's the human way of doing things. Some people just throw themselves in, like, diving into a pool of water, cold or warm or whatever it is, and dealing with what comes next. But most people are more prudent and cautious, and they have to work with themselves so that they feel emotionally capable of dealing with potential consequences.
Mm.
I mean, if somebody's at the end of their rope and they have nothing left to lose and they speak their truth and they're willing to walk out the door, they're ready. That's one scenario. But there might be other scenarios where there's either unfinished business between the people, there's family to take into consideration. Sometimes somebody needs a break and they go off by themselves for several months, whatever it happens to be. But it's you speaking your truth and standing for what is true for you, I think, is the point, and doing the necessary work to get yourself there. Being willing to let go of your old patterns, letting go of the things that hold you back, facing your own fears, and coming, doing your own work first and ongoingly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think particularly in relationships, we always look to someone else changing, and if only they would do da 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 da. And what I'm hearing you say is do your work first.
Yeah, because that other person is a mirror. That other person is a mirror for your own shadow, for your own sides that you don't see in yourself. And so be willing to step in there into that shadow realm, into that place inside yourself, and ask to see, well, how is this person a mirror for me? Am I doing that I'm accusing them of doing, or holding them to blame for something? Do I do that? And how can I kind of take that back and put it in my heart and just love it into myself? And that takes the onus off someone else, that takes the blame off someone else, because you realize you're both just mirrors to each other.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you've mentioned a couple times, it's about knowing your truth and speaking your truth. How do we know that? How do we know when it's our truth?
Um, I can only answer it for me.
Please.
It just feels right within myself, in my mind, in my feelings, in my body. There's just a sense of, this is how I really feel. This is what's really true for me.
Mhm. Mhm. But
And
you've developed a system where you can feel it, right, Jyoti?
yes, yes, for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's being willing to be with your feelings and not just go up into your head, which I have a tendency to do, and think it through, but being with your feelings, and letting your feeling body inform you also. And sometimes that means dealing with the fear first, so that you can hear those feelings more clearly.
Do you have some advice for someone wanting to try that themselves?
Well, I'm a big proponent of therapy. Um, Meditation,
Mhm.
quiet time in nature.
Yeah.
I have a simple exercise. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I think I will borrow from Alberto Villoldo's method of his death arrow. So he asks you to have a small stick, which he calls his death arrow, or you can use a matchstick if you have a matchstick, but a small, tiny little stick, and have a candle, and to blow into that death stick, that small stick that you have, The things that are no longer pertinent for you, the things that you can see in yourself don't work, and maybe worked for a time, but not now, no longer. And so you just close your eyes and you just breathe those things into this death arrow, and you just blow it in, whatever it is, a way of thinking, a way of feeling, a way of communicating. And then you take that death arrow and you put it into the flame of the candle. And you let it burn for as much as you can. And letting the flame transform what you've put in there energetically. Fire is a great transformational energy and tool to transform old into new. And so being able to release that into the death arrow and put it into the fire consciously, willingly, lovingly, to be transformed. That's a very simple method.
It's perfect. Jyoti, is there anything more on this topic you'd like to share today?
I just think if we could picture ourselves standing at that doorway into the future, our own future, and each piece of work that someone does on themselves feeds into the collective. It's like the 100th monkey syndrome. Once a number of people have done a good piece of this work, it's available to everybody and it'll just become the norm. And so the more people can picture themselves standing at that doorway and releasing that dense baggage that they've been carrying or that was given to them to carry, from their present moment now, as they get ready to step through that doorway into their own future, I feel like, the collective consciousness and collective burden has such a chance at more smoothly and more quickly being able to move into what's coming.
Beautiful. Jyoti, thanks for sharing this wisdom today.
Oh, you're welcome, Lauren. Thank you.
For all of our listeners out there, we're going to be taking a little bit of break while I move my family across country, and Jyoti has agreed to take this pause with me. We will be back together on December 13th with a new recording. Jyoti, if folks wanted to check in with you, we're getting close to the end of the year. It's a wonderful time for an astrology reading or to gift an astrology reading to a family or friend. How might they reach out to you?
I have gift certificates available through email. My website is jyotiwindastrology.com. And I also have a free YouTube channel with classes and a few meditations on there. It's under my name, Jyoti Wind.
Great. Jyoti, thanks so much.
You're welcome.